newcomers might think that all of the exciting racing happens in the top GTP category in IMSA. But us die-hard fans know that the real dogfight happens in the production-based GTD classes. So let's jump on board with Antonio Garcia in his brand new Corvette and have him take us to the front of the field. As Antonio Garcia takes to the track for this 24-hour endurance classic, I briefly want to talk about this moment for Corvette Racing, because 2024 represents the start of a new era. Now, obviously they have the brand new 2024 Z06 GT3.R, which is the first Corvette built by the factory to full GT3 specification. And with this comes a change in philosophy, with the car being designed for customer teams and for gentleman drivers, not just the all-pro lineups and factory team like the previous cars were designed for. And in another small change, Corvette Racing becomes Corvette Racing by Pratt Miller Motorsports. Now, this is still the factory team and drivers that we know and love, but nevertheless, it represents a small distancing by GM and Corvette from the program. Alright, enough blabbering. With the GTD and the GTD Pro fields lined up 2 by 2, that means it is time to go racing. Nervous moments as the field anticipates the green, but finally the flag flies and Antonio Garcia hurdles his brand new Corvette across the start-finish line. If we look to the right, we can see the blue GTD Ferrari make his way past, but also the red number 62 Risi Ferrari around the outside into turn 1, nearly making contact as the Chevrolet Ferrari does make contact with the Lamborghini up front and slides back behind the number 3 Corvette. Now, although that is a pass for track position, it is not a pass for class position, because the GTD and the GTD Pro cars are classified separately. We can see the 62 Risi Ferrari making his way past the GTD Lamborghini number 78 of Misha Goldberg up front as they go through the kink into the second horseshoe. It's a late break from Misha Goldberg up the inside of the Ferrari, just about getting that Lamborghini slowed down in time. He gets hard on the throttle, a little wiggle as those rear tires are not up to temperature yet. Antonio Garcia looks around the outside. The Lamborghini defends to the inside. That compromises Goldberg's exit though. Antonio Garcia gets hard on the throttle. On the low side of the Lamborghini is able to slot past that GTD car. Although these passes don't technically count for position, these drivers in both classes will fight tooth and nail. These GTD teams all put their pros in for the start of the race. So GTD or GTD Pro doesn't really matter. Everyone is fighting on this opening lap. And through the chicane, the Corvette closes in on number 45 Lamborghini of Kyle Marcelli as he was just passed by that 62 Ferrari who is making his way quickly up through the field. That is Ferrari factory ace Daniel Serra behind the wheel. And we can now see the performance of this Corvette as he makes his way alongside that Lamborghini of Kyle Marcelli, who just doesn't quite have the pace in the straight line of this brand new Corvette. Into turn 1, and the fighting has intensified up front. We can see the Ferrari around the outside of Klaus Bachler, Porsche factory driver, and the number 86 992 Porsche. These might both be GTD cars in front, but again, these are pro drivers trying to hold track position on Antonio Garcia as he looks around the outside of the Porsche driven by Klaus Bachler, who gets hard on the throttle. That 992 Porsche, not quite as fast in a straight line, but certainly has the pace on the infield here. But as I said, that 992 Porsche has struggled with straight line performance ever since it arrived last season, and on the high banks, Bachler does not stand a chance compared to this Corvette, and watches as Antonio Garcia goes around the high side with that Triarci 032 Ferrari following closely behind. Those Ferraris look so quick in a straight line, and he makes his way around the outside of Porsche factory driver Klaus Bachler. With Antonio Garcia now past that Porsche, he can set his sights on this GTD and GTD Pro field in front of him. we can see the white and green Acura of Catherine Legge putting pressure on the GTD Pro Porsche Rexy, driven by Michael Christensen in front of her. She looks at the inside, Rexy goes slightly wide, and Catherine Legge squeezes the throttle on the exit, with the 34 Conquest Racing Ferrari following closely behind. They go side by side through the kink as Catherine Legge looks to make a move on the Pro Class car. Garcia seizes the opportunity and goes around the 34 Conquest car of Manny Franco, with the 3RC Ferrari following closely behind. It is an absolute dogfight here 10 minutes of the race. Catherine Legge goes off the road. That compromises Antonio Garcia's exit, and the 3RC car makes his way around and struggles to put the power down as he tries the over-under on Catherine Legge up front as they temporarily go 3 wide onto the high banks. The Ferrari just about to pull ahead of the Corvette, and they are once again single file as they make their way into the chicane. Breathless moments here for the GTD categories, and all of this probably missed by the broadcast. Into the chicane, Alessio Rivera sends a late move on Catherine Legge and gets the position into the bus stop. Antonio Garcia looks to get a really strong exit though, and follows closely behind the Acura of Catherine Legge. We know those Ferraris are strong in a straight line, but let's see about this Acura. Can Catherine hold off factory driver Antonio Garcia in his number 3 Corvette? Coming up to the start-finish straight, Antonio Garcia looks around the outside. It's tough to make a move there. Garcia brakes late, but Catherine is just able to hold a nose in front on the exit. They are side by side, but Catherine holds the throttle flat and maintains track position in front of the factory Corvette driver. As he brakes late into the first horseshoe, we see another gaggle of GTD cars in front. Catherine running an aggressive wide line coming out of the horseshoe as we see GTB traffic come whizzing by in the name of Acura prototypes. Into turn 1 one more time, and Catherine Legge has made her way in front of the 34 Conquest Racing Ferrari. We will have that car full season, so finally a full season Ferrari once again in IMSA. But Catherine looks at the inside of the Pro Porsche Rexy, driven by Michael Christensen. They went side by side to the kink earlier, and she looks to make a move one more time, but Michael is just able to hold that wider line with slightly more downforce in his 992 Porsche and maintain the position ahead of Catherine Legge. Into the second horseshoe, and Franco now looks around the outside of Catherine Legge, braking as late as possible in that Ferrari, but he brakes slightly too late, and Franco gets a worse run off the corner because of it. Garcia looks up the inside of that full season Ferrari and is able to just about put the power down better than that 296 Ferrari and make his way ahead on track of that GTD car. But again, still no pass for class position. Into the bus stop, and Catherine Legge tries that late move that Alessio Rivera did to her into the bus stop chicane and gets past Michael Christensen in the 77 Rexy Porsche onto the high banks one more time. We know that Porsche struggles with straight line speed, but maybe in the draft of Catherine Legge, Christensen can keep that Porsche ahead of the number 3 Corvette. As these cars reach VMAX coming to the start-finish line, that Porsche we can see is just struggling to even stay in the draft of the Acura NSX. Into turn 1, Michael Christensen lifts out of it, doesn't put up a fight, and allows the number 3 Corvette to pass for position. Although I am breathless right now, it's worth mentioning this is obviously a 24-hour race. Drivers at this point can afford to lift out of the throttle and take it slightly easier. Jumping up to the front of the field, the number 14 Lexus of Ben Barnicoat leads into turn 1, but the Ricci Ferrari sneaks his way through on the inside, showing just how strong that 296 is here at Daytona. Jumping back aboard the Corvette, not even half an hour into the stint, we have our first safety car and the first pit stop for this new Z06 GT3. It is a relatively routine one. The team jumps off the wall, puts in some fuel, and Antonio Garcia is pushed back just slightly because there's not enough room in these pit boxes, and leaves a nice burnout as he exits the pit box. Now, coming back to the green flag, we can't quite see what happens here. Literally, all of the onboards are showing the drivers, not the track at this moment. But we can hear Antonio Garcia ever so slightly hitting the brakes. And then if we do a bit of sleuthing and zoom in on his helmet, we can see a couple cars start to flash by, and he's clearly upset. We can do a bit more sleuthing and jump on board with Joey Hand and see in his rearview mirror, if we look on the left-hand side, there's a Mercedes and the Corvette, the number 3 Corvette with the number 4 Corvette following the 65 Mustang through. Back aboard with Antonio Garcia, and looking up front, we can see he was jumped by so many cars on that restart. There's the 4 Corvette of Tommy Milner and the 65 Mustang of Joey Hand with the McLaren of Oliver Jarvis as well. But Garcia launches a late move around the outside, passing the Mustang and his sister Corvette in the first horseshoe, gets hard on the throttle, and is now firmly behind that number 9 Pfaff McLaren. Garcia making quick work after a compromised run to the green flag. Into the second horseshoe, it's a late break as he looks around the outside of that McLaren, who is firmly behind the 34 Conquest Racing Ferrari. Jarvis looks up the inside one more time into the final corner of this infield section. The Ferrari runs slightly wide, and Jarvis is hard on the throttle with the rear of that McLaren squirming under acceleration. Jarvis just about has the overlap with the Conquest Racing car, and we can see the straight line performance of this McLaren as he claws his way up alongside that 296 Ferrari that's looked strong all day long. This McLaren is a car to be reckoned with at Daytona, but Garcia is following closely behind and also makes his way past that GTD Ferrari. But if we look to the left, we can see LMP2 cars, a gaggle of them in the wall. Something must have happened up front. The number 77 Porsche and number 1 BMW both use this opportunity to go into the pit lane. And we can jump aboard once again with the 14 Lexus as we see this discombobulated LMP2 field in front of him. The Ligier and the Orca side by side through turn 1, and the Ligier runs the Orca off the road. The Lexus, having nowhere to go, slams into the rear of the LMP2 car. And it is race over before it begins, already down second, third, fourth place for this Lexus. Absolutely nowhere for Mike Conway to go as the hood falls off. And that is day done before it even begins for the 14 car. With the yellow flag having come and gone, we jump back aboard the number 3 Corvette as the green flag flies. And it's a much cleaner view in front of Antonio Garcia, with just 2 GTD Pro cars in front as he brakes late into turn 1. That Pfaff McLaren is just in front of this 3 Corvette, and I have a feeling that there's going to be a strong rivalry between these two teams in GTD Pro this season. This McLaren has looked strong so far, but the team is already running into issues with the cockpit being extremely hot and the drivers having to be doused in water during their pit stops just to help cool them down. That is not a great sign, especially considering that this is not a particularly hot day here at Daytona. But Jarvis will try to endure the heat for one more stint as he brakes late into the second horseshoe and tries to chase down this number 19 Lamborghini up front and tries to stay away from the 3 Corvette of Antonio Garcia, who is following closely behind. Through the final corner of this infield section, where the McLaren struggles a bit compared to this 3 Corvette, and onto the high banks, where we can see the McLaren stretch its legs out front, showing really good straight line performance. As the stint continues though, Antonio Garcia is able to stay close to this number 9 McLaren, and as they head into turn 1, McLaren brakes slightly earlier and loses the rear end as that car refuses to turn. Now, 30 minutes into the stint, those tires have worn with that lower downforce McLaren sliding around more on the infield, and Antonio Garcia goes around the outside through the first horseshoe with the GTD Mercedes trying to make his way past the Corvette. Oliver Jarvis gets hard on the throttle and uses all of the road to stay in front of the number 3 Corvette, but that McLaren is struggling now on these worn tires. And there's a BMW GTP which is struggling up front, having locked up the tires coming out of the pits. Both of the GTD Pro cars able to avoid it though, as Jarvis uses all of the road through the second horseshoe, braking slightly earlier than the Corvette into the final hairpin, and just can't rotate that McLaren on these worn tires. Garcia able to hold that tighter line as Jarvis has to use all of the road to maintain his momentum onto this long straight. On the banking, Jarvis once again extends the gap, but into the bus stop chicane. Jarvis cannot slow down his McLaren. A little bit of understeer through the mid-corner and just can't get on the throttle because the car wouldn't rotate. Garcia is now fully in the draft of this number 9 McLaren and closes in on the high banks. We can see that although the McLaren has a straight line performance once in the draft, the Corvette sucks up behind this McLaren. And as they rapidly approach the start-finish line, Garcia pops to the high side and takes second position away from the Plaid and Papaya number 9. Jarvis into turn 1 though, struggling once again to get the car slowed down, and that number 80 Mercedes sneaks past as well, with Garcia in the number 3 car now stretching his legs in second position in GTD Pro. By the time the pit stop came around, the number 19 Lamborghini pitted as well, putting this number 3 car in first position, meaning that less than 2 hours into its debut race, the number 3 Corvette made its way all the way to the front of this GTD Pro field. With this GTD Pro battle settling down as the day turns to dusk and as dusk turns to night, the number 3 crew was able to maintain strong performance from its Corvette Z06 all the way up until the next morning. A persistent oil leak caused by crash damage was plaguing the number 3 Corvette. And finally, with the situation being critical, the 3 car had to make its way behind the wall, where the Corvette crew proved their mettle once again and why they are considered one of the best teams in all of the sport. Alexander Sims fires this number 3 Corvette into the garage, with the team quickly descending on this Z06, and in the matter of just over 10 minutes is able to fix the issue with the oil leak and get Alexander Sims back into the paddock, where he hustles to get this number 3 car back in the pit lane. And he gets a little slide on those cold tires getting back onto pit lane as he gets back underway on the racetrack. With that excellent work from the crew, as well as some issues for their competitors, the number 3 car found themselves in 5th place with just over an hour to go. And that is where the race would end for this number 3 car. Anyways, since we are at the end of the video, I am going to project a bit about how this Corvette will fare in the new LM GT3 category, because Daytona and Le Mans are similar circuits. So it seems like the Corvette doesn't quite have the pace of the McLaren or the Ferrari, but it certainly has more straight line performance than the Porsche, and has really good tire life because of its downforce as well. So I don't think it'll be a shoo-in for class victory, but it certainly will be a strong podium contender come June. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate your love. I appreciate your support. I love you guys, and I will see you next time.